What's up, everyone? It's the Hub City Hoops Talk podcast. We got Jacob Harris. I'm Austin Massey. Today, we're going to be going over Texas Tech's road matchup at TCU coming up on Tuesday. We're super excited to go over this one with you guys. Just as a quick reminder, Jacob and I are kind of trying to grow the channel. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. I think we actually just reached 100 subscribers, Jacob. So super excited about that, man. But yeah, hit the subscribe button, guys. Hit the like button. Any support you can give goes a long way. But let's just dive right in, Jacob. TCU, give me your initial thoughts.
Well, I put three words. I put long, athletic, and old. Like they're pretty lengthy. They remind me a lot, and both of us kind of have this like comparison kind of to Houston, where they're just really long and athletic, and they're experienced. You know, they're 10 deep. They can hit you with so many different pieces. They can play so many different lineups. It's really hard to game plan for.
Yeah, they're tough, right? There's a reason why they beat TCU. They beat Houston at home. One of the only teams to beat Houston this season. But from a matchup standpoint, an athleticism standpoint, I don't love the matchup for Texas Tech. There are a couple of things that I think that Texas Tech can kind of exploit that maybe TCU doesn't necessarily do super well. But just right off the bat, TCU runs a pretty high tempo offense. So I know you and I were talking before this. It's going to be important that they try to slow them down, in transition and really just make it a half court game, grind out each possession. Texas Tech is pretty slow, adjusted tempo wise, but they do run a very methodical, high efficient offense. So the first key to the game for me is really going to be slowing TCU down, stopping their athleticism. I think that's what you'll see. You'll see Texas Tech getting back defensively pretty quick, setting up their half-court defense, and not allowing TCU to run out in transition. And that's kind of my initial first thought there. But TCU's led by Emmanuel Miller, Jacob. Give me your thoughts on him.
So he's just kind of their do-it-all guy. I mean, he's averaging dang near 17 points, 6 rebounds a ball game. Can pass it. He's got 59 assists on the year. That's almost 3 per game. He's shooting nearly 40% from outside. Can get to the rim. Very athletic. He's going to be really, really hard to stop. We're kind of debating pre-pod, like who's really going to guard him. I really think Darian Williams probably has the best matchup against him. He's probably the best athletic fit to go against him, but we'll see. He's their best player by far, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. He's old, he's experienced, he's very, very versatile. He's been really impressive, kind of with the ball in his hands this season, actually, which is pretty surprising. He gets a little out of control at times. He's maybe a little bit turnover prone. But really just he can do it all. He can even knock down shots from the outside every now and then. But a matchup that I'm watching on the Texas Tech side, TCU's pretty long, like from the 1 through 5, but their front court's actually not super long. I think Uday is really their biggest player in the post. And what is he, 6'11", and Uday isn't really, he plays 17 minutes a game. So he's not going to be a Warren Washington kind of guy from a minute standpoint. I would like to see Texas Tech kind of feed Warren Washington in this game and make him the featured kind of pick and roll guy here. I thought that they've had a lot of success with that against teams in Big 12 play so far. And I don't really think, defensively, I don't think TCU really concerns me too much. They're ranked outside of the top 60 in adjusted defense. So this is going to be a battle of two high octane offenses. Texas Tech may not run out as much in transition, but they're, like I said, very methodical, very efficient. I think they're actually number 4 in adjusted offense over the last 10 games. Texas Tech is. So they've really been balling on that side of the ball. Don't be surprised if this is like a 75, 80 point, per team kind of game. That's what it feels like it's setting up for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Warren Washington is I like that prediction, kind of make him the featured player, because after Uday, there's a little bit of a drop in size. And I think Warren Washington's more athletic than Uday as well. I think Washington's going to be able to kind of exploit his pick and roll defense and get to the rim because he does that against bigs that are really athletic as well. Like there are some points in yesterday's game, and I think Godwin and Hughley are two pretty athletic bigs, and there were points yesterday where even if they didn't get him the ball, he was just wide open down the paint.
Yeah.
Just wide open. And I think that's an area they'll be able to exploit TCU's defense as well.
Yeah, I agree. And it should be a pretty good environment. I think last year I went to the game and TCU won that game, but a lot of Tech fans there, but it will be a loud environment. It'll be much more hostile than it was in Norman. But really, it's going to be this is going to be a big game. I'm kind of back and forth about how I think it's going to fall. I think that the thing about TCU is they do turn the ball over a good amount, which plays into Texas Tech's favor, especially on the road. Texas Tech has been very good with ball security so far through conference play. They're averaging around 8.6 turnovers per game. TCU is ranked 212 in the nation in turnover percentage. So again, that is a matchup to watch. Texas Tech needs to, they need to win the turnover battle. And then, off of Texas Tech turnovers, they need to make sure TCU isn't running out in transition and getting, letting those athletes kind of get to the rim. Because, again, the reality is with Evan Cambridge out, your best athlete is Chance McMillan. I mean, Joe Toussaint's a great athlete as well. I think he could be in for a bounce back game. And I believe actually last time, his freshman year, I believe Pop went to TCU and had a pretty good game, his first Big 12 game. So, it's going to be a high scoring game in my opinion. But, Grant McCaslin is going to have to scheme. Grant McCaslin and Dave Smart are going to have to scheme TCU's athleticism out of this one.
Absolutely. It's going to be interesting, the guard matchups, because they have a couple of really, really good shooters from outside. Obviously, Jermaine Nelson Jr. is kind of a do-it-all guy, and Trey Tennyson's an elite shooter. He's shooting 46% on about 4.5 attempts per game. That's really, really good. And of course, like his that number doesn't even do him justice. He's only averaging 9.5 for the season, but I believe you said he's one of their leading scorers in conference play. Like I remember watching the other day, like he can just hit threes like nobody's business. Yeah. Contested, off balance, off dribble, like any kind of outside shot he can hit. So it'll be very interesting to see how Tech's guards match up against that. If Tennyson's on the floor, I believe a guy like Pop is probably going to guard him. I bet a guy like Toussaint or Chance McMillan will guard Jameer Nelson Jr. the majority of the time. But we'll see. We're not even talking about Avery Anderson, who's torched the Red Raiders in the past at Oklahoma State. Like he's on this team. He plays. He starts about half the games. He plays more of a 6-man role if he's not starting. So does Jameer Nelson Jr. I mean, this team is just so deep. It's hard to know. It's hard for us to exactly predict. Like, Emmanuel Miller is going to drop 30 on you, because you don't know, because Jameer Nelson Jr. dropped 30 the last game for him. Trey Tennessee could come out and easily have a 20-point game. They got like 5 or 6 guys that could go off for 15 plus at any point.
Yeah, they do. I mean, they're an extremely deep team, kind of the opposite of Texas Tech almost. I mean, Texas Tech has a pretty thin rotation. It obviously got thinner whenever Cambridge went out. But yeah, they have guards that can, not just guards. I mean, Emmanuel Miller can go for 25 in, any given night. But really, looking at their 3-point stats, not super impressive. They only have 4 guys who shoot it over 30%. They do have three guys that shoot it over 39%. So it's really like, Emmanuel Miller, Chuck O'Bannon, and then Tennyson. Those are the 3 guys you want a hand in their face on the 3-point line. Don't be surprised if that's something that TCU schemes up as well, because Texas Tech has been pretty, they've been focused on, that packed in defense where they're pushing things out of the paint. But their defensive rotations and some of their over pursuit defensively allows a lot of open 3-point shots. So don't be surprised if Jamie Dixon schemes some stuff up for Tennyson, O'Bannon, Miller, to get open looks. And that could be something to keep an eye on. But again, this team doesn't take a ton of 3-point shots. They're actually, They actually have one of the lower 3-point rates in all of college basketball. But hey, against Texas Tech, teams love to have their best shooting nights, of the season. So we'll see what happens. Yeah, it's been happening for a few years now.
It has.
It started with Beard, man. It was the no middle
did.
defense, and then these guys just always shoot it lights out against Tech. But hey, I think the whole idea is, you'd live with that, right? Especially a team that's not really statistically, they don't have many shooters. So I'm totally okay with that, especially against a team who's extremely athletic. So force TCU to the outside, keep them out of the paint. And maybe guard those couple of shooters along the perimeter a little bit more tightly. But yeah, really excited for this one. TCU, they're actually not ranked in the AP. They probably will be tomorrow. We're recording this on a Sunday, but easily a top 25 team. They've gotten some bad luck here. Especially I remember watching that Kansas game. I believe it was the conference opener, and they should have won that game. They should have won that game. They got screwed. I mean, that just put it frankly, they got screwed by the refs. And they called a flagrant foul on Uday, I believe, against Hunter Dickinson, and they ended up getting 2 free throws plus the ball back. And they should have won that game. So TCU could easily be towards the top of the Big 12 standings right now. They did beat Houston at home, which is a big win for them. And then they just went on the road and beat Baylor in a triple overtime. They put up 105 points on Baylor. So again, I think that this is going to be a game where it's kind of two very good offenses, very different offenses, and how they how they operate. Texas Tech takes a lot of threes. They also are a very good 3-point shooting team, very good free throw shooting team. But both teams in general have a pretty good effective field goal percentage, and just overall good offensive metrics. The one area where, once again, Texas Tech is a little bit, maybe outside looking in, is going to be offensive rebounding. Feels like every preview we're talking about how, all these teams are so good at offensive rebounding. But yeah, TCU top 20 offensive rebounding team. It hasn't been a huge kind of mismatch for Tech so far in conference play. Let's see if they can continue that. Yeah, we'll see if they can continue that. But let's hear your predictions for this one, Jacob.
So I think TCU kind of gets it done. I don't kind of like we talked about. This is the end of Texas Tech's toughest 4-game stretch of the season. They've already won 2 of those 4 games, which is about what my expectation was. They're just so deep. I'm curious to see, and I don't know if it was you or RC who on Twitter last night or X kind of was like, what do you think about like the 3 overtimes leading into this game for TCU? Because obviously they're coming off this huge emotional win that not only was huge and emotional, but they played 55 minutes. That's a lot for a Big 12 game that it's just tough and physical. Yeah. And I wonder how that affects them. But I think I'm still leaning towards TCU a little bit. My guess will be 88-83 TCU.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a good point. Maybe just a single overtime, you wouldn't think it would have that much of an impact, but 3 overtimes on the road, 2 nights rest, you play again on Tuesday. It could definitely have an impact, absolutely, especially for some of their high usage guys. But it's not going to matter. Jamie Dixon's going to have those guys ready to play. They'll be, they're pretty ferocious. They're not like Houston in terms of their consistent level of intensity. Obviously defensively, of course. But just looking at TCU's last 10 games alone, they've been a top 25 team in the country, and a top 60-ish defense in the country. So again, not their strong suit, but it's not Texas Tech's strong suit either. I'm looking for a high scoring game as well, Jacob. I'm going to go TCU 82, Texas Tech, I'm going to say 76. So I do think it's going to come down to the final few minutes. My biggest fear is Texas Tech potentially getting into foul trouble. They've been so good at staying out of foul trouble this season. But again, on the road, it feels like the calls on the road are a little bit tougher. At least against Oklahoma, they sure were. And against Houston, they were. It was pretty rough to watch at both of those games, actually. But we'll see what happens. I don't think, the one good thing that I do see here is I don't think TCU's defense is like, super physically imposing. And I think that's where Texas Tech can struggle and kind of get into a rut. Oklahoma is a much more physical defensive team than TCU, in my opinion. But on the flip side of that, TCU's offense is very athletic, and they're very, they can get up and down and transition.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
and they have dudes, and they're deep. So I'm looking for
Absolutely.
this one to be a close. I agree, though. I do think this is a game that Texas Tech will drop. But again, going 2-2 in a stretch where you played essentially 3 tournament teams, you gotta be okay with that.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and then that's really it for the preview today, guys. Again, please subscribe if you haven't already. We also have our podcast on Spotify and Apple. If you prefer to listen to them, we try to get those posted around the same time. But yeah, we'll be doing a Big 12 rankings kind of update, sometime early next week. And that one will be fun, Jacob. I'm excited for that.
Absolutely. I am as well.
But all right, guys, have a good day, and thanks for listening.
Yes, sir.